Hi there, this is that essay writing girl with the video about being a disabled black girl. I am, as I put it, a weird black girl, or better yet, a disabled black girl. Because while over the years we have had portrayals of black women, some very notable ones such as Raven Baxter from That's So Raven, Jodie Landon from Daria, Anissa Pierce from Black Lightning, Bumblebee from Teen Titans, and Annalise Keating from How to Get Away with Murder, and so many more, I find myself wondering at times, where is the portrayal of the black girls that don't find themselves fitting into a neat, roughed up box that a black girl that everyone is used to? I find myself questioning at times what it would be like to see a black girl with ADHD, autism, or perhaps a mental illness, as well as a physical disability represented in any media such as books, television, movies, art, web media, animation, etc. Us disabled black girls with mental, physical, and neurological conditions are treated as nuisances both inside and outside our communities, as many people do not know or are not aware of our experiences. It's like being invisible enough and having this outline where people can detect you just enough to where you're barely seen and not quite heard. I have written this essay in hopes that other outside black women who are also misaligned but not quite seen can be heard. When I was in high school, they did not know what to do with the constantly panicking me. So they put me in special ed and then alternative school because a disabled me was in a place that did not understand me as needing help beyond cold faces and unempathetic replies, or responses rather. And a paper by Anna Hinton named Refusing to be Made Whole, Disability in Contemporary Black Women's Writing, while, as quoted, talking seriously seriously disability scholars are taking seriously, disability scholars arguments that African American writers and activists disassociate disability from blackness, thereby marking disability as truly deviant. I demonstrate how black women like Gail Jones have engaged a radical discourse in the writing of this period. Hinton then goes on to say that for her, the motivation of writing this paper as the central concerns of this paper congealed, however, when I took my first disability studies course. While my other white classmates thought of disabled relatives, friends, and acquaintances only after a great deal of time and what seemed with less difficulty, I had a list of my closest relatives and friends and myself with what seemed with much difficulty. Yet, when we began to engage in disability studies, scholarships, there was very little written by Black critics or written about Black disabled people. In honoring our Black leaders in history, we should point out how so many of them were disabled and fought hard against both racism and ableism. Fannie Lou Hamer, Audre Lorde, Lois Curtis, and so many, many more were disabled and helped alongside the movement. Most biographies, as noted on Ms. Magazine's of Tubman do not examine her as a disabled woman. Yet Tubman was a woman who spoke freely about the symptoms and pain she experienced due to her injury. And this is a side note, but when I mentioned Tubman, this is obviously Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman got her disability when she was just a young woman, and I believe she was in a shop, and it was a another enslaved person there who was in the store, and the slave owner was there, and he asked, he re- not even requested, he actually commanded Harriet to try to get the enslaved person. and Harriet refused. So the slave master or the slave owner picked up a weight and trying to throw that weight after the slave accidentally hit Harriet. But and all of those the things that started with her head and her passing out and whatnot that started with her being hit in the head with a weight, a very big weight. And obviously the slave master and the slave owner was like free, let go free, because obviously there was no restitution in those times for those things. But that is how that happened. Um, so, anyways, the silence around Tubman's disability originates from the limiting language 19th century's physicians used to describe her symptoms: painful headaches, disruptive and frightening fits, and what was then described as narcolepsy. Fannie Lou Hamer is worth expanding upon as well, and had many marginalized identities come together to make her a great activist as well. Often buried in her history, who unfortunately passed away in 1977, was that she spoke as a woman who also had a disability. She had polio as a child and lived with a limp that worsened when the police beat her in 1963, leaving her with kidney damage and vision loss. Hamer was a poor black woman sharecropper from rural Mississippi who became an integral part of the struggle for voting rights in America. In an article by the WID, or World Institute on Disability, it is noted that in disasters and emergency, black disabled people, who most oftentimes live in resource-deprived areas, experience worse outcomes in relation to white disabled people. They are also disproportionately impacted because their disability preparedness, response, and recovery. Additionally, black disabled people face discrimination through systems of policing. The limited data we have on the topic shows more than 50% of black disabled people will be arrested by the time they turn 28, and at least 50% of people, killed by police are disabled. We are not only in danger of not having representation, but having our bodies torn in violent altercations. Why, going back to quote Anna Hinton, there was little written about black disability straightforwardly in many research sites or in real papers with any meaning. And another article named The Immovable Veil of Black Disability: An Introduction to Black Disability Threat Theory and its application to the school to prison nexus by Deshae Templeton. There in the abstract, she proposes a new theoretical framework that incorporates an intersecting analysis of blackness and disability. Black disability threat theory. Contributing to this is the notion that being visibly black and visibly disabled causes moral panic to disabled and non disabled populations belonging to any racial group, including non disabled black American persons and disabled white American persons. Templeton continues by saying that being obviously black and obviously disabled excludes one from belonging to and fully participating in either the disability culture or the black culture, as we are accepted by neither. So, seeing as we are accepted by neither, by our native black community due to our disability, as we know in the black community, we struggle with ableism, which is far less discussed than some of the other ills in the black community, while also finding no leeway in the disabled white community or mainstream disabled community. Because, as stated, we are visibly black. I say, as a black woman, we've got to continue using our voice on accord of the hope that we can bring attention to those voices. As noted with the black women leaders who were disabled, who still achieved and overcame extremely hard things, we can come together, build a foundation to use whatever skills we have, whether they rely on the more creative, artsy side, or even something along a scientific, technical skill to express our perspectives more. Disabled black women and girls deserve to have their disabilities portrayed in the media, whether physically, mentally, with respect and frequency, just as the white disabled has their disabilities handled. It is my greatest dream to have mentally ill, physically disabled, and neurologically differently front and center in my stories. I would love to see myself reflected, and thus other Black women will feel reflected. As an artist, it is my job to reflect the current issues I see befalling society and the problems of our times. I think for what it's worth, perhaps if more of us speak up. I hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry if I stumbled over all my words. This is just so still new to me. But I would like to thank you guys for still sticking here. If you still made it and it stayed to the end, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the video.